March 23, 2003, Nasiriyah, Iraq. Desert sun beats down on American supply trucks moving through narrow streets. Inside, soldiers carry letters from home, photographs of families, dog tags that clink softly with each bump in the road. Jessica Lynch, the beautiful face. Behind America's most famous POW rescue would soon dominate headlines worldwide. Within hours, the 507th Maintenance Company convoy is shattered by rocket-propelled grenades and automatic weapons fire. Private First Class Jessica Lynch, 19 years old, is captured. Media outlets immediately craft a narrative, a brave fighter battling until overwhelmed, a symbol of American courage. Military commanders expected routine logistics. Reality delivered ambush, casualties, and captivity. Yet, the true story remains buried beneath layers of propaganda and misunderstanding. What actually happened in those chaotic moments? How did myth replace truth? This is the documented account of America's most controversial prisoner of war rescue, where heroism, media manipulation, and wartime reality collided. The morning of March 23rd began like any other convoy mission. The 507th Maintenance Company departed Kuwait with 33 vehicles and approximately 600 personnel. Their mission: deliver critical supplies to the 3rd Infantry Division advancing toward Baghdad. The unit consisted primarily of support soldiers, mechanics, truck drivers, water purification specialists. Combat training remained minimal for most. Private First Class Jessica Lynch, 19 years old, came from Palestine, West Virginia. She enlisted seeking education benefits and adventure beyond her small Appalachian hometown. Her military occupational specialty: supply clerk. She had completed basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, 8 months earlier. Her weapon qualification: marksman, the middle tier of 3 levels. The convoy stretched for miles. High mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicles, MMWVs, provided limited protection. Most supply trucks offered none. The 507th traveled light on ammunition, heavy on repair parts and rations. Standard operating procedure for logistics units operating behind secure lines. Navigation proved problematic from the start. The convoy's lead vehicles missed their intended turn. Instead of bypassing Nasiriyah on Highway 8, they drove directly into the city center. Nasiriyah, population approximately 500,000, sat astride the Euphrates River. Iraqi forces, including Fedayeen paramilitary units, controlled significant portions of the urban area. Lynch rode in the 5th vehicle of her section, a 5-ton cargo truck. Her squad leader, Sergeant Robert Dowdy, drove. Specialist Edgar Hernandez occupied the passenger seat. Lynch sat in the rear compartment with Private First Class Patrick Miller. Standard radio communications connected each vehicle. The mood remained calm, but alert. At approximately 0700 hours, the convoy entered the city's southern districts. Narrow streets replaced open highway. Buildings pressed close on both sides. Iraqi civilians watched from doorways and windows. Some waved, others stared silently. The first rocket-propelled grenade struck at 0715. The explosion tore through a HMMWV near the convoy's front. Machine gun fire erupted from buildings and alleyways. Chaos replaced order instantly. Drivers accelerated, trying to push through the ambush zone. Vehicles collided. Some soldiers returned fire, others sought cover. Lynch's truck continued forward until an Iraqi truck struck it from the side. The collision sent her vehicle careening into the rear of another American truck stopped ahead. The impact threw Lynch forward violently. Her head struck metal. Consciousness fled. When she awoke hours later, everything had changed. The ambush lasted approximately 90 minutes. Iraqi forces employed coordinated small arms fire, rocket-propelled grenades, and vehicle-borne attacks. The 507th Maintenance Company suffered its worst casualties of the war. 11 soldiers died, 6 were captured, including Lynch. Sergeant Robert Dowdy died instantly in the crash. Specialist Edgar Hernandez sustained fatal injuries. Private First Class Patrick Miller survived the initial impact but died from wounds shortly after capture. Private First Class Lori Piestewa, driving the vehicle ahead, died from injuries sustained in combat. She became the first Native American woman killed in combat in service to the United States military. Iraqi forces quickly overwhelmed the surviving Americans. Some soldiers attempted to establish defensive positions. Others were captured while unconscious from crash injuries. The Fedayeen Saddam, paramilitary forces loyal to the Iraqi regime, controlled the ambush site within 2 hours. Lynch remained unconscious throughout her capture. Medical personnel later documented her injuries: fractured right arm, fractured left leg, fractured right foot, fractured lumbar spine, and head trauma. None of these injuries came from gunshot or shrapnel. All resulted from the vehicle collision. Iraqi forces transported the captured Americans to Saddam Hospital in central Nasiriyah. The facility, built in the 1980s, served as the city's primary medical center. Iraqi medical staff, including Dr. Harith al-Husona, began treating Lynch's injuries immediately. They administered intravenous fluids, conducted X-rays, and stabilized her fractures. Meanwhile, 3 miles away, American forces struggled to comprehend what had occurred. Initial reports remained confused and contradictory. The 1st Marine Division, securing Nasiriyah's bridges, learned of the ambush through fragmentary radio transmissions. Battalion commanders attempted to account for all 507th Maintenance Company personnel. Hours passed before accurate casualty figures emerged. Command elements in Kuwait received the first reports at 0900 hours. 5 soldiers confirmed dead. Status of others unknown, vehicles destroyed or captured. The ambush represented one of the most significant single-event casualties of the invasion's first week. By nightfall, March 23rd, American intelligence officers began piecing together the incident. Satellite imagery showed burning vehicles scattered throughout Nasiriyah's southern districts. Signal intercepts revealed Iraqi forces celebrating a victory. But specific information about captured Americans remained elusive. The Pentagon released minimal information to the press. A logistics convoy had been attacked. Casualties occurred. Details remained classified pending notification of families. This information vacuum would prove critical in the narrative that followed. March 24th, 0600 hours, Eastern Standard Time. American television networks broadcast breaking news, United States soldiers captured in Iraq, names withheld, families being notified. The 24-hour news cycle demanded information faster than military channels could verify facts. By noon, networks identified Jessica Lynch by name. Reporters described her as a teenage soldier from rural West Virginia. They displayed photographs from her high school yearbook. They interviewed neighbors in Palestine, population 856. The narrative began taking shape. Initial reports claimed Lynch had fought fiercely until her ammunition was exhausted. They described her firing her M16A2 rifle until it jammed. They reported multiple gunshot wounds. They characterized her capture only after fierce resistance. None of these details came from official military sources. The story contained every element television news valued: young, attractive woman, small-town background, heroic combat, enemy capture. Networks devoted hours to Lynch coverage. Cable news channels displayed her photograph constantly. Pentagon officials, struggling to gather accurate information from Iraq, found themselves responding to media narratives rather than establishing facts. The embedded journalist program, implemented for Operation Iraqi Freedom, placed reporters directly with combat units. This unprecedented access produced real-time reporting from battlefields. However, logistics units like the 507th lacked embedded reporters. Information about the ambush came from fragmentary reports, not eyewitness journalism. Washington Post reporters, citing unnamed Pentagon sources, published detailed accounts of Lynch's capture. Their March 30th article described her fighting fiercely, sustaining gunshot and stab wounds before capture. The article characterized her actions as heroic and inspirational. It became the definitive early account of the incident. Other publications followed. New York Times, Los Angeles Times, USA Today, all repeated similar narratives. Lynch emerged as the human face of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Her capture symbolized American vulnerability. Her anticipated rescue represented pending triumph. Television networks prepared graphics packages. They commissioned military experts to analyze potential rescue operations. They speculated about her treatment in captivity. They interviewed family members in West Virginia, whose anxiety and confusion played out before millions of viewers. The Pentagon's Public Affairs Office faced unprecedented pressure. Reporters demanded details about rescue planning. They sought information about Lynch's condition. They requested interviews with soldiers who knew her. Military officials, bound by operational security and lacking complete facts, provided minimal official statements. This information vacuum allowed speculation to flourish. The heroic narrative solidified not because evidence supported it, but because no contradictory information emerged to challenge it. March 28th through March 31st represented critical days for American intelligence operations. Central Command tasked multiple assets with locating captured soldiers. Signals intelligence monitored Iraqi communications. Human intelligence sources in Nasiriyah reported hospital locations. Aerial reconnaissance photographed medical facilities. The National Security Agency intercepted communications referencing American prisoners at Saddam Hospital. Satellite imagery confirmed unusual activity around the facility. Iraqi military vehicles appeared in parking areas. Armed personnel patrolled the perimeter. These indicators suggested high-value captives inside. Special Operations Command began planning a rescue operation. Joint Special Operations Command, headquartered at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, coordinated the effort. They designated the mission Operation Iraqi Freedom Package Number 11, informally called Operation Vulcan, by participating units. Planning teams consisted of Army Rangers from the 75th Ranger Regiment, Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 6, Air Force Special Operations Command combat controllers, and Marine Corps reconnaissance elements. Total assault force, approximately 200 personnel. Supporting elements added another 300. Planners studied satellite imagery frame by frame. They measured building dimensions, they counted windows and doors, they identified potential defensive positions, they calculated approach routes. They estimated enemy force strength at 30 to 50 Iraqi combatants in and around the hospital. Medical planners prepared for worst-case scenarios. They assembled trauma specialists, anesthesiologists, and orthopedic surgeons. They configured Black Hawk helicopters with intensive care capabilities. They positioned surgical teams at forward operating bases. Intelligence analysts compiled dossiers on Lynch and other potential prisoners. Medical records indicated her pre-deployment health status. Psychological profiles predicted her potential response to captivity. Every detail mattered for post-rescue care planning. The operation required approval from the highest levels. General Tommy Franks, commander of United States Central Command, authorized the mission. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld received briefings. President George W. Bush monitored planning progress. Simultaneously, another factor complicated operations. An Iraqi lawyer named Mohammed Odeh al-Rehayev approached United States Marines at a checkpoint outside Nasiriyah. He provided detailed information about an American female soldier in Saddam Hospital. He described her location, her condition, and the facility's layout. He claimed hospital staff treated her well, but Fedayeen forces controlled the building. Intelligence officers interrogated al-Rehayev extensively. His information matched other intelligence sources. He agreed to return to the hospital and gather additional details. His subsequent reports proved crucial to final planning. By March 31st, planners finalized the operation. Hour 0100 hours, April 1st. The largest special operations rescue mission since Operation Urgent Fury in Grenada, 1983, was ready to execute. April 1st, 0030 hours. Nasiriyah's streets lay quiet, under moonless skies. Iraqi forces maintained minimal patrols. Most Fedayeen fighters slept. The city's electrical grid operated sporadically, leaving many districts dark. Perfect conditions for night operations. 6 Black Hawk helicopters departed forward operating Base Shell, located 30 miles south of Nasiriyah. Each carried a mix of Rangers, SEALs, and support personnel. Apache attack helicopters provided armed escort. AC-130 gunships orbited overhead, their sensors monitoring every approach route. The assault force carried the latest American military technology. Every operator wore 4th-generation night vision goggles. Their weapons mounted infrared laser designators invisible to naked eyes. Their communication systems provided encrypted real-time coordination. Their body armor incorporated ceramic plates capable of stopping rifle rounds. By contrast, Iraqi forces at Saddam Hospital possessed minimal night vision capability. Their weapons lacked modern optical systems. Their communications consisted of handheld radios and cellular phones. Their defensive positions relied on daylight surveillance. At 0055 hours, Marine Corps artillery began a diversionary bombardment 3 miles east of the hospital. Iraqi forces responded, moving personnel toward the perceived threat. This deception worked perfectly. When helicopters approached the hospital at 0100 hours, minimal defenders remained. The assault force fast-roped from helicopters onto the hospital roof and surrounding grounds. Teams moved with practiced precision. Room-clearing procedures, rehearsed hundreds of times, became automatic. Night vision transformed darkness into green-tinted clarity. Rangers secured the perimeter. SEALs entered the building. Combat controllers established communications networks. Medics positioned themselves to treat casualties. The entire insertion took 90 seconds. Inside, Iraqi medical staff and patients reacted with confusion and fear. Most initially believed the building was under attack by Iraqi forces. When American operators announced their presence in Arabic, surprise replaced fear. The hospital's director, Dr. Anmar Uday, immediately cooperated. SEAL team operators moved room to room systematically. They encountered no armed resistance. Fedayeen forces had abandoned the hospital hours earlier, possibly warned by the Marine artillery barrage. Within 12 minutes, searchers located Lynch in a second-floor room. She lay in a hospital bed, unconscious from sedation. Iraqi doctors had treated her fractures competently. Her vital signs remained stable. Medical personnel quickly assessed her condition, stable for transport. No immediate life-threatening injuries, ready for evacuation. The operation's speed and precision reflected years of special operations evolution. From planning through execution, American forces demonstrated overwhelming tactical superiority. Technology, training, and coordination produced textbook results. At 01:15 hours, helicopters lifted off with Lynch aboard. Total time on target, 15 minutes. Total shots fired by American forces, 0. Total casualties, 0. The Black Hawk helicopter carrying Lynch flew directly to forward operating base Shell. Trauma surgeons waited in a fully equipped field hospital. They transferred her from helicopter stretcher to examination table within seconds of landing. Initial medical examination documented injuries precisely. Right humerus fractured in 2 places. Left femur fractured mid-shaft. Right foot multiple metatarsal fractures. Lumbar spine compression fracture at L1. Head trauma with probable concussion, no gunshot wounds, no stab wounds, no defensive injuries. Doctors noted her condition carefully. She remained sedated but responsive to stimuli. Blood pressure stable, heart rate elevated but within acceptable parameters. Respiratory function normal. Iraqi medical care had been appropriate and professional. Within 2 hours, military transport aircraft evacuated Lynch to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. This facility, the largest American military hospital outside the United States, specialized in combat casualty care. Orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons, and rehabilitation specialists stood ready. At Landstuhl, medical teams conducted comprehensive evaluations. X-rays confirmed fracture locations and severity. MRI scans revealed soft tissue damage. Neurological examinations assessed brain injury extent. Every finding was documented meticulously in her medical record. The medical evidence contradicted early media reports comprehensively. No gunshot wounds meant she had not been shot while fighting. No defensive wounds meant she had not engaged in hand-to-hand combat. All injuries consistent with vehicle collision meant the crash, not combat, caused her trauma. Military medical personnel recognized the discrepancy immediately. The medical record told one story. Media reports told another entirely. This disconnect would create significant complications. On April 2nd, Pentagon briefers faced reporters in Washington. They confirmed Lynch's rescue. They described the operation's success. They praised the special operations forces involved. But when reporters asked about Lynch's combat injuries, briefers referred them to medical personnel. When reporters asked about her fighting before capture, briefers stated they could not confirm those details. This careful language failed to penetrate the established narrative. Television networks replayed earlier reports of Lynch's heroic resistance. Newspapers republished accounts of her fierce fighting. The American public, already invested in the heroic story, showed little interest in medical minutiae that contradicted it. Military medical records remained classified, protected by privacy regulations. Lynch herself remained sedated and unable to communicate. Her family, overwhelmed by sudden attention, relied on military briefers for information. The truth existed in medical charts and after-action reports. But those documents remained unavailable to journalists constructing their narratives in real time. The gap between medical reality and public perception widened daily. The Department of Defense released rescue operation footage on April 3rd. Video showed night vision imagery of helicopters approaching Saddam Hospital. It showed operators fast roping to the ground. It showed teams entering the building. It showed Lynch being carried on a stretcher to a waiting helicopter. Pentagon officials characterized the video release as demonstrating American military capability. It showcased technology, it highlighted training, it proved special operations forces could execute complex missions deep in hostile territory. From a military perspective, Operation Iraqi Freedom Package Number 11 represented complete success. Media outlets broadcast the footage repeatedly. Cable news channels played it continuously. Networks incorporated it into special reports. However, most coverage focused on Lynch herself rather than the operation's technical aspects. The narrative remained personal, not tactical. Viewers saw what they expected to see. Night vision footage appeared dramatic and dangerous. Fast roping from helicopters looked heroic. Room-clearing procedures seemed intense. Most civilians lacked context to interpret what the footage actually showed, a virtually unopposed operation in an undefended facility. The video contained subtle indications of minimal resistance. No muzzle flashes suggested enemy fire. No explosions indicated defensive measures. Operators moved deliberately rather than frantically. These details, obvious to military professionals, escaped general audiences. International media outlets questioned the operation's necessity. British newspapers, particularly BBC News, investigated Iraqi hospital staff accounts. Dr. Anmar Uday told reporters that Fedayeen forces had abandoned the hospital days earlier. He stated that American forces could have walked through the front door without opposition. He characterized the nighttime raid as theatrical rather than necessary. These accounts created controversy, but failed to displace the dominant American narrative. Most United States media outlets dismissed Iraqi sources as propaganda. They emphasized American military statements over foreign testimony. They maintained that Special Operations Forces would not have conducted such an elaborate operation without justification. The footage itself became iconic. It appeared in military recruitment videos. It featured in documentaries about special operations. It represented modern American military power at its technological peak, night vision imagery, advanced helicopters, precision execution, everything viewers associated with post-Cold War military superiority. Yet the footage documented something simpler than most viewers understood. It showed professional soldiers executing a well-planned operation against negligible opposition. It proved American forces could rescue a captured soldier. But it also revealed, for those willing to examine closely, that the operation faced far less resistance than initial reports suggested. The video became evidence supporting multiple competing narratives. Each side saw what they wished to see. Lynch regained full consciousness on April 4th. Medical personnel at Landstuhl prepared her for conversations about her experience. Psychologists briefed her on the media coverage. They explained that public perception of her capture and rescue might differ from her actual memories. She remembered almost nothing of the ambush itself. The crash impact knocked her unconscious immediately. She retained no memory of combat, of firing her weapon, of fighting Iraqi forces. Her first clear memory came hours later, waking in an Iraqi hospital bed with medical personnel providing treatment. This gap between her memory and public narrative created profound confusion. Military personnel showed her newspaper articles describing her fierce resistance. They played television news segments characterizing her as a heroic fighter. She insisted repeatedly that she had not fought, had not fired her weapon, had been unconscious during the entire ambush. Doctors explained that head trauma could cause memory loss. Perhaps she had fought but could not remember. Lynch rejected this explanation. Her weapon, recovered by American forces, had not been fired. Its magazine remained full. This physical evidence matched her memory, not the media narrative. Military public affairs officers faced a dilemma. They could correct the record publicly, explaining that initial reports were inaccurate. This risked appearing to diminish Lynch's sacrifice. Alternatively, they could allow the heroic narrative to persist, avoiding controversy but maintaining falsehood. They chose a middle path, stating they could not confirm combat details while emphasizing the legitimacy of her injuries and captivity. This approach satisfied no one. Media outlets continued reporting the heroic narrative because military officials did not explicitly deny it. Lynch grew increasingly frustrated as the myth persisted despite her attempts to correct it. Her family, besieged by reporters in West Virginia, struggled to reconcile the daughter they knew with the hero portrayed on television. On April 12th, Lynch was transported to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. Orthopedic surgery repaired her fractures. Physical therapy began rebuilding strength. Psychologists helped her process trauma. Throughout recovery, media requests poured in constantly. Every major television network sought interviews. Publishers offered book contracts. Hollywood producers proposed film adaptations. Lynch, 19 years old and recovering from severe injuries, found herself at the center of a national mythology she neither created nor controlled. The truth of her experience mattered less than the symbolic value of the narrative constructed around her. July 22, 2003, Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Lynch granted her first extensive interview to Diane Sawyer of ABC News. The interview, carefully negotiated by military public affairs and Lynch's family, aired on national television on November 7th. Lynch spoke clearly and directly. She described her injuries as resulting from the crash, not combat. She stated she had not fought, had not fired her weapon, had been unconscious during capture. She characterized media reports of her heroic resistance as false. She expressed frustration that these myths overshadowed genuine heroism by other soldiers, particularly Lori Piestewa, who died in the ambush. The interview created immediate controversy. Some viewers accused Lynch of false modesty, others praised her honesty. Media critics questioned why initial reports had been so inaccurate. Pentagon officials faced renewed pressure to explain the discrepancy between early accounts and Lynch's testimony. The Washington Post, whose March 30th article had established the heroic narrative, published a follow-up investigation in June. Reporters examined their sources. They discovered that Pentagon officials had provided information based on initial, unverified field reports. These reports, generated in the confusion following the ambush, contained speculation presented as fact. The newspaper acknowledged that its article had contributed to a false narrative. Other media outlets conducted similar retrospectives. The New York Times examined its coverage. NBC News reviewed its reporting. Most acknowledged, repeating unverified information. Some defended their initial coverage as based on best available information at the time. Others accepted responsibility for inadequate verification. The military conducted its own assessment. The Army's after-action review documented the ambush chronologically. It established that Lynch's weapon had not been fired. It confirmed her injuries resulted from the crash. It noted that no evidence supported claims of combat engagement. This official report, published in July, provided definitive documentation. However, the heroic narrative proved remarkably resilient. Many Americans continued believing Lynch had fought heroically, despite her own denials and official documentation. To the contrary, the myth had become more powerful than the truth. Scholars later identified this case as exemplifying several phenomena: the speed at which misinformation spreads in modern media, the difficulty of correcting false narratives once established, and the tendency for symbolic stories to persist despite factual contradictions. Lynch herself struggled with this disconnect throughout her recovery and beyond. The political dimensions of Lynch's story emerged gradually. Republican officials initially used her rescue as evidence of military effectiveness and resolve. Democratic officials, while supporting Lynch personally, questioned the Pentagon's information management. Both parties recognized the narrative's propaganda value. The Bush administration faced criticism about Operation Iraqi Freedom's broader conduct. Weapons of mass destruction, the primary justification for invasion, remained undiscovered. Iraqi resistance continued longer than predicted. American casualties mounted steadily. In this context, Lynch's rescue represented a clear, successful operation with an unambiguous positive outcome. Vice President Dick Cheney referenced Lynch's rescue in multiple speeches. He characterized it as demonstrating American commitment to leaving no soldier behind. He praised Special Operations Forces' professionalism. He used the operation to illustrate military capability and moral superiority. Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld similarly incorporated Lynch's story into public statements. He emphasized technological advantages American forces possessed. He highlighted the successful intelligence gathering and operation execution. He portrayed the rescue as vindicating military transformation initiatives he championed. Congressional Democrats approached the story more cautiously. They supported Lynch and her rescuers while questioning the Pentagon's public affairs handling. Senator Frank Lautenberg of New Jersey requested investigations into how false information reached the media. Representative Henry Waxman of California questioned whether the Pentagon had deliberately exaggerated Lynch's combat role for propaganda purposes. These investigations revealed institutional failures rather than deliberate deception. Initial field reports, generated amid chaos, contained speculation and assumption. These reports reached the Pentagon through multiple channels, gaining apparent authority with each transmission. Public affairs officers, under pressure to provide information quickly, repeated these reports without adequate verification. The system designed to manage information during wartime proved inadequate for the 24-hour news cycle. Traditional military protocols assumed time for verification before public release. Modern media demanded immediate information. This mismatch created conditions where inaccurate information spread before accurate reports could be compiled. Lynch herself became increasingly uncomfortable with the political attention. She had enlisted to serve, not to become a political symbol. Her rescue, while deeply appreciated, had occurred because of her comrades' sacrifice and American military capability, not because of any action she took. Yet politicians of both parties referenced her repeatedly, often without her knowledge or consent. The politicization of her story added another layer of complexity to her recovery and reintegration. April 22, 2007. Nearly 4 years after her rescue, Lynch testified before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. The hearing examined the Tillman and Lynch matters, referring to both Lynch and Corporal Pat Tillman, killed in Afghanistan by friendly fire in April 2004. Lynch's testimony, delivered in formal congressional setting, provided her most comprehensive public account. She described her capture straightforwardly. She stated explicitly that reports of her fighting were false. She characterized the Pentagon's handling of her case as exploiting her for propaganda purposes. I am still confused as to why they chose to lie and tried to make me a legend when the real heroics of my fellow soldiers that day were in fact legendary, Lynch testified. She praised Laurie Piestewa, Sergeant Donald Walters, and other soldiers who died in the ambush. She insisted their genuine heroism deserved recognition more than false narratives about her. The testimony created significant media coverage. Major newspapers reported her statements prominently. Television networks broadcast excerpts extensively. Congressional representatives praised her courage in testifying. Military officials acknowledged problems in their information management. However, the testimony changed little about public perception. Surveys conducted afterward showed that most Americans retained positive impressions of Lynch, regardless of specific details about her capture. The symbolic value of her story, young American soldier captured and rescued, mattered more than factual accuracy about how events occurred. This phenomenon troubled historians and journalists. It suggested that narratives, once established, possess extraordinary staying power. Facts, even when presented clearly and repeatedly, struggle to displace compelling but inaccurate stories. Lynch's case became a frequently cited example in media literacy education. Lynch herself moved forward with her life. She completed her education at West Virginia University, graduating with a degree in elementary education in 2007. She married her high school sweetheart. She worked as a kindergarten teacher in rural West Virginia. She gave occasional interviews and speeches, but generally avoided public attention. Her military service ended with medical retirement in August 2003. She received a medical discharge due to injuries sustained in Iraq. She was awarded the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star Medal, and the Prisoner of War Medal. These decorations recognized her sacrifice, even as questions about her specific combat role remained. The legacy of her experience continued shaping discussions about military-media relations, combat heroism, and truth in wartime. 2 decades after the ambush in Nasiriyah, the Jessica Lynch story occupies a complex place in American military history. It remains simultaneously a successful rescue operation, a propaganda failure, and a cautionary tale about information management in modern warfare. The Special Operations Forces who conducted the rescue performed brilliantly. They planned meticulously, executed flawlessly, and extracted Lynch successfully with 0 friendly casualties. From a purely military perspective, Operation Iraqi Freedom Package No. 11 demonstrated American special operations capability at its finest. The operation validated years of training, billions in technology investment, and doctrinal development since Vietnam. The public affairs handling represents the opposite. Initial information failures created false narratives that dominated coverage. These narratives proved extraordinarily difficult to correct, despite Lynch's own testimony and official documentation. The military's information management systems, designed for slower communication eras, could not adapt to 24-hour news cycles and embedded journalism. Lynch herself navigated these complexities with dignity. She repeatedly insisted on truth while acknowledging the genuine heroism of soldiers who died. She refused to accept unearned credit while honoring those who deserved recognition. She maintained that Lori Piestewa, not Jessica Lynch, should be remembered as the hero of the 507th Maintenance Company's ambush. The broader implications shaped subsequent military operations. The Pentagon reformed its public affairs protocols. Verification procedures became more stringent. Embedded journalist programs received additional oversight. Training programs began emphasizing information accuracy over speed of release. Academic institutions incorporated the Lynch case into curricula. Journalism schools analyzed the media failures. Military professional education programs examined the information management problems. Ethics courses explored the gap between symbol and reality. The case became a standard reference point for discussing truth in wartime reporting. For veterans of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Lynch's story represents something different. It symbolizes the vulnerability of logistics soldiers thrust into combat. It highlights the risks support personnel face in modern warfare where front lines blur. It reminds combat armed soldiers that heroes exist throughout the military structure, not just in infantry and armor units. The soldiers who died in the Nasiriyah ambush, 11 total, including several captured soldiers who died in Iraqi custody, rarely receive equivalent attention. Their names: Robert Dowdy, Jamal Addison, Edward Anguiano, James Keel, Johnny Mata, Lori Piestewa, Brandon Sloan, Donald Walters, Howard Johnson, Ruben Estrella Soto, and Patrick Miller. Their sacrifice made Lynch's rescue necessary. Their families endured loss, while Lynch's survival created celebrity. Today, lessons from Jessica Lynch's experience continue shaping military doctrine, media practices, and public understanding of modern warfare. The immediate operational lessons were integrated quickly. Logistics convoys received enhanced security procedures. Route planning incorporated greater attention to urban terrain risks. Maintenance companies increased combat training. Communication systems were upgraded to provide better situational awareness. These changes reduced similar incidents in subsequent operations. The information management lessons took longer to implement, but ultimately proved more significant. The Department of Defense established the Pentagon Channel in 2004, providing direct military communication to bypass traditional media filtering. Public affairs officers received enhanced training in verification procedures and source assessment. Combat camera teams deployed more widely to provide authoritative visual documentation of operations. Media organizations similarly revised practices. Major newspapers strengthened fact-checking protocols. Television networks increased skepticism towards single-source stories. Journalism schools emphasized verification over speed. The Lynch case became required study in media ethics courses. For Lynch personally, the story's ending arrived gradually rather than dramatically. She completed her education, she married and started a family, she worked as a teacher. She occasionally spoke publicly about her experience, but generally maintained privacy. She succeeded in reclaiming her life from the mythology constructed around her. In 2014, 11 years after the ambush, Lynch participated in a ceremony dedicating a memorial to the soldiers killed that day. The monument, erected in Palestine, West Virginia, listed all 11 names. Lynch spoke briefly, emphasizing their sacrifice. Local community members, veterans organizations, and some surviving families attended. National media coverage was minimal. This quiet ceremony represented Lynch's preferred legacy, remembrance of those who died rather than celebration of those who survived. She had stated repeatedly that real heroism belonged to Lori Piestewa, who died protecting her squad, and to the other soldiers who gave their lives in service. The broader significance of Lynch's story lies not in individual heroism or rescue operation success, but in how societies construct meaning during wartime. People need heroes. Media provide them. Military organizations leverage them. Politicians reference them. This pattern repeats across conflicts and generations. Jessica Lynch did not ask to become a symbol. She enlisted seeking education benefits and personal growth. She served competently in her assigned role. She survived traumatic injury and captivity. She recovered and rebuilt her life. These facts deserve recognition without false embellishment. The true heroism of Jessica Lynch lay not in combat she did not engage in, nor in resistance she could not offer, but in the quiet resilience she showed throughout recovery, the honesty she maintained despite pressure to accept false narratives, and the grace with which she insisted that others receive the recognition they earned. Her story endures as a reminder that truth in wartime often struggles against mythology, that individual soldiers become symbols larger than themselves, and that honest service deserves respect without requiring invented heroism.